Hello and welcome back. In this video we'll be making our first batch of terrain for the sci-fi tiles, so we'll be using these textures here and a bunch of household items like toilet roll tubes, drinking straws and bits of cardboard, and if everything goes according to plan we should end up with something that looks like this. So as you can see, it contains barrels, crates, canisters and that kind of thing. So let's get started. Okay, the first thing we'll have a go at making are the barrels, and these are made in a similar way to the dungeon barrels that we made back in episode 3. So we'll start off by cutting out a section from a toilet roll tube that's the size you can see on the screen right now, and we'll also need to draw a line that's 3/8 of an inch in from one end. And the reason for this is that this is the area that we're going to overlap when we glue the cardboard into a small cylinder shape. So something like that. Then we can take the main barrel texture and cut that to the same size as the tube, so that's 2¼ inches by 7/8. Then it's just a matter of applying some glue to the back of the texture, with a glue stick as normal, and wrapping it around the tube, so that we end up with something like this. Okay, next we're going to take these two textures here, and we're going to glue those to some thin cereal box type cardboard, like so. Then we just need to figure out how big to cut the lid, as each one is probably going to be ever so slightly different. And when doing this, I personally like to cut mine slightly larger than it needs to be, and then trim away a little bit at a time so that I eventually get a tight fit. As I say, you can see this procedure in a bit more detail in episode 3. Anyway, here's one that I made ahead of time, and as you can see it's a nice snug fit. But before gluing it in place, we're first going to take a hole punch and punch out a small circle from the smaller piece. And we can then glue that near to one edge, so that it kind of looks a bit like the cap that you sometimes find on the top of these kind of barrels. So here I am just pushing the lid back into place, and to make sure it stays in place, I like to add a bit of white glue to the underside. Just a few blobs around the edges. And there you go, this is the kind of thing we're aiming for. However, you may have noticed that I've also included a few hazard markings on the PDF file, and we can use these to add a bit more detail here and there. So here you can see that I've cut out a strip that's long enough to wrap around the entire barrel, and now I'm applying some glue to the back, and then simply gluing it in place. There we go. And while I'm at it, I'll also glue on one of the triangular warning labels as well. There you go, there's the finished barrel. And while you might like to keep them as individual pieces, like this one, you can also glue several of them together to make a bit of area terrain. So, that's the barrels done, now for the crates. Okay, once again, these are made in a similar way to the dungeon crates that we made in episode 19, so for the larger of the two, we're going to cut out these 3 pieces here, leaving a slight border around the edges. Then we'll glue the main piece to some thin cereal box type cardboard, and the 2 end pieces to some thin single corrugated cardboard, and give both of those a few minutes to dry. Once they have dried, we can trim them to size with a sharp knife, and we'll also need to score the main piece along these lines here, which will make it a bit easier to fold it into a box-like shape. Like so. Okay, next we'll apply a thin line of hot glue to the end of this piece, and glue the top edge of one of the side pieces into place, and then do the exact same thing for the other side. All that's left to do then is apply another thin line of glue to both edges of the front panel and fold it back into place, and then repeat the process for the back panel. And that's all there is to it. It's pretty straightforward stuff. So there's the finished crate. As I say, it's the same method that we used in episode 19. And for the smaller crate, that's this one here, that's been made in exactly the same way, but as you can see, this time I've glued several of them together. And that's the crates finished. Right then, the final thing we're going to have a go at making are a few canisters, and the first thing we'll need to do for these is cut out enough of this texture here to wrap around a regular sized drinking straw. Then we're going to do a similar thing with this texture, but this time we'll cut out enough to wrap around a larger straw. Then we'll need to glue those in place, though it's a good idea to rough up the surface of the straws with a bit of sandpaper first, just so that we get a slightly better adhesion. Anyway, there we go, and once they've dried, we can cut them to size with a sharp pair of scissors. Okay, next we can take 2 of these pieces here, and glue those to some thin cardboard, And also do the same thing with this texture. So something like that. Then we'll cut these two to size and punch out a couple of small circles from the other piece with a hole punch. All that's left to do then is glue these pieces to the ends of each straw. So here I am gluing the smaller circles to the smaller straw, doing my best to squeeze the hot glue inside the straw itself, and when we're done, it should look something like this. Then we'll just need to do the exact same thing for the larger straw, so here's one I've made earlier. And just like before, we can keep these as individual pieces, but they do look much better when you glue several of them into a pile, like you can see here. So yeah, that's how to build all the different bits and pieces, and while they probably don't look all that great individually, when you put everything together, like you can see here, they don't look too bad at all. Anyway, that's it for this one, so feel free to let me know what you think of these, and what games you might be using them for, and I'll look forward to reading through the comments. So yeah, bye for now.